always thought secrets were for strangers, for people who didn't know each other, who didn't trust each other. But I was wrong. Sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden right in your own home, behind the faces you see every single day. It started on a rainy Thursday, the kind of day where the sky feels heavy, and you can't shake the feeling that something's about to go wrong. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the credit card company. My mother-in-law's card, the one I managed for her, had just been used at a luxury boutique downtown. At first, I didn't think much of it. My mother-in-law, Linda, loved to shop. She always said it was her therapy. But something about the timing felt off. She'd told me she was spending the day at home, resting. So why was her card being swiped at a store she'd never mentioned before? I shrugged it off, telling myself I was overthinking. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It was like a tiny pebble in my shoe, annoying, persistent, impossible to ignore. That night, as I lay in bed next to my husband, Mark, I stared at the ceiling, replaying the day in my mind. I had no idea that this was just the beginning, that soon I'd uncover a betrayal so deep it would shake the very foundation of my family. The next morning, I tried to brush it off. I made breakfast, packed Mark's lunch, and tried to focus on my work. But every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of anxiety. I started checking the credit card app more often, watching for anything unusual. A week went by, then 2. Each time Linda visited, I watched her more closely. She seemed the same, chatty, cheerful, always bringing over her famous lemon bars. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up after one of Linda's visits, I found a crumpled receipt in the trash. It was from the same boutique. The date matched the day Linda said she was homesick. I stared at the receipt, my heart pounding. Was she lying to me? And if so, why? I decided to keep quiet for now. I needed more information. I needed to be sure the next few weeks were a blur of suspicion and doubt. I started keeping a journal, writing down every strange thing I noticed. Linda's sudden interest in expensive brands, Mark's late nights at work, the way they both seemed to avoid certain topics at dinner. I started to feel like a detective in my own home. I checked the credit card statements every morning, highlighting any charges that seemed out of place. I even started tracking Linda's movements, noting when she left the house and when she returned. One day, I decided to follow her. I waited until she left for her yoga class, then slipped out behind her, keeping a safe distance. I watched as she drove across town, parked outside a fancy cafe, and met up with a woman I didn't recognize. They hugged, laughing and chatting like old friends. I snapped a few photos from my car, my hands shaking. I couldn't see the woman's face clearly, but something about her seemed familiar. After an hour, they left the cafe and walked down the street to the boutique. I watched as they disappeared inside, my mind racing with questions. Who was this woman? And why was Linda spending so much time and money with her? That night, I confronted Mark. "Do you know if your mom has any new friends?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged. "Not that I know of." "Why?" I hesitated, not wanting to reveal too much. "I just noticed she's been going out a lot lately. Shopping, meeting people." Mark laughed. "That's Mom for you. She gets bored easily." But I could see a flicker of something in his eyes. Was it worry? Guilt? I couldn't tell. I decided to dig deeper. The next day, I called the boutique, pretending to be Linda's assistant. I asked if they remembered her, if she'd been in recently. "Oh, yes," the saleswoman said cheerfully. "She comes in all the time, always with the same young woman. They're quite the pair." My heart skipped a beat. "Young woman?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes, very stylish. Blonde hair, always laughing. They seem very close." I hung up the phone, my hands trembling. I knew exactly who the saleswoman was describing. It was Mark's mistress. I'd seen her once, at a company party. She was hard to forget. Tall, blonde, with a laugh that turned heads. I remembered the way Mark looked at her, the way he seemed to light up when she was around. I felt sick to my stomach. Was Linda really spending time with her? And if so, why? I started to pay closer attention to Mark. He was more distant than usual, spending long hours at work, barely speaking to me when he got home. When I asked about his day, he gave vague answers, never meeting my eyes. One night, I decided to check his phone. I waited until he was asleep, then carefully picked it up from the nightstand. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages. There it was, a string of texts between Mark and his mistress. They talked about meeting up, about Linda, about shopping trips and dinners. They even joked about how clueless I was. I felt a wave of anger and humiliation wash over me. How could they do this to me? How could Linda, my own mother-in-law, betray me like this? I knew I had to do something. But what? The next morning, I confronted Linda. "I know you've been spending time with Mark's mistress," I said, my voice shaking. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Linda. I saw the receipts. I talked to the boutique. I know everything." She stared at me for a long moment, then looked away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." I felt tears prick at my eyes. How could you do this to me? To your own family? Linda sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's not what you think. She's not a bad person. She makes Mark happy." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "And what about me? Don't I matter?" Linda looked down at her hands, silent. I left the room, my heart pounding. I felt like I was losing everything. My husband, my family, my sense of security. That night, I confronted Mark. "I know about the affair," I said quietly. He looked at me, his face pale. "Who told you?" "It doesn't matter. I know, and I know Linda's been helping you." Mark didn't deny it. He just looked away, ashamed. I felt a strange sense of relief. At least now, the truth was out. I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just sit back and watch them make a fool of me. So I started planning. I kept my suspicions to myself, acting like everything was normal. I smiled at Linda, laughed at Mark's jokes, played the part of the perfect wife and daughter-in-law. But behind the scenes, I was gathering evidence. I saved every receipt, every statement, every text message that seemed suspicious. I even followed Linda one afternoon, watching as she met up with Mark's mistress at a cafe across town. They didn't see me. They were too busy laughing, too busy spending my family's money. That night, I sat down at my computer and pulled up the credit card account. I stared at the screen for a long time, my finger hovering over the cancel card button. I thought about all the times Linda had lied to my face, all the times Mark had made me feel crazy for suspecting him, all the money they'd spent, all the secrets they'd kept. And then, with a deep breath, I clicked cancel. The next morning, the phone rang. It was Linda. "Something's wrong with my card," she said, her voice tight with panic. "It's been declined everywhere. Can you fix it?" I took a deep breath. steadying my voice. "I'm sorry, Linda. There's been some suspicious activity. I had to cancel the card for your own protection." There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, could almost feel her anger through the phone. "Well, when will it be fixed?" she snapped. "I'm not sure," I said calmly. "The bank is investigating. It might take a while." She hung up without another word. Later that day, Mark stormed into the house, waving his phone in the air. "What did you do to Mom's card?" he demanded. I looked him in the eye, my voice steady. There were too many suspicious charges. I had to protect our finances. He glared at me, but I didn't back down. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. The next few days were a whirlwind of tension and silent accusations. Linda stopped coming over. Mark barely spoke to me, his anger simmering just below the surface. But I didn't care. I knew I'd done the right thing. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, Mark's phone buzzed. He left it on the counter, and without thinking, I glanced at the screen. It was a message from his mistress. "Linda says she can't use the card anymore. What are we going to do?" My hands shook as I read the message. It was all the proof I needed. I took a screenshot and sent it to myself. Then, I sat down with Mark and showed him the message. He stared at the screen, his face pale. "I know everything," I said quietly. "I know about you and her. I know about Linda helping you. I know about the money." He tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming. He finally broke down, admitting everything. Linda had been helping him cover up the affair. She'd been using her card to pay for gifts, dinners, even hotel rooms. And all the while, she'd been lying to my face. I felt a strange sense of relief. At least now, the truth was out. I knew I had to confront Linda. I called her and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I sat her down and showed her the receipts, the statements, the messages. She tried to deny it at first, but eventually she broke down. "I just wanted Mark to be happy," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He said you didn't understand him. He said she made him feel alive." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "And what about me?" I asked. "Did you ever think about how this would hurt me?" She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far." But it was too late for apologies. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't trust her anymore, that I needed time to figure out what to do next. Linda left, her shoulders slumped, her face streaked with tears. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the evidence spread out on the coffee table. I felt numb, empty, betrayed, but I also felt a spark of something else. Determination. I wasn't going to let them win. After that day, everything changed. Mark moved out, unable to face what he'd done. Linda stopped calling, too ashamed to show her face. I was left alone, picking up the pieces of my life. But I wasn't broken. If anything, I was stronger than ever. I started focusing on myself, my career, my friends, my own happiness. I realized I didn't need Mark or Linda to be whole. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to my instincts, to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. And slowly, the pain started to fade. I started going out more, reconnecting with old friends. I took up new hobbies, tried new things. I even started dating again, though I was careful, taking things slow. I realized that life goes on, even after betrayal, that you can find happiness again, even when it feels impossible. And in the end, that's the greatest revenge of all. Months passed. Mark tried to come back, apologizing, begging for another chance. but I knew I deserved better. Linda wrote me a long letter, pouring out her guilt and regret. She said she'd lost everything: her son, her dignity, her sense of self. I read the letter, but I didn't respond. I needed to move on to leave the past behind. I sold the house, started fresh in a new city. I found a job I loved, made new friends, built a new life. Sometimes I still think about what happened, about the lies, the betrayal, the pain, but I don't let it define me. I don't let it hold me back. I am stronger now, wiser, more resilient, and I know that I can handle anything life throws my way. Looking back, I realize that betrayal doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to break you. Sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But that doesn't mean you have to let them win. You can take back your power. You can stand up for yourself. You can choose to move forward, even when it feels impossible. And in the end, that's the greatest revenge of all.